he told the Marine Corps, this time you're going to participate. And the Marine Corps was like, no, we're good. And he was like, yeah, you're going. I'm not stuttering. You're going to do this thing. So Force Recon's primary mission is deep reconnaissance, battle space shaping for the force commander. Some people have the idea that there's a stereotypical former SOF dude. And I don't think I'm that guy. The platoon sergeant hated my guts. This thing is happening, and there've been rumors. It's real. What do you say to an offer like that? A large part of my adult life had been, built around the idea that, hey, you're training to do this thing. And so finally actually doing it, at this point I'd been at Force Recon for so long, they were like, man, you got to go somewhere. So I went to be an instructor. So yeah, absolute culture shock. I was more scared walking into those classrooms than I was walking down the street in Najaf. I was much more at home with a rifle in my hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, it's both an honor and a pleasure to welcome my next guest to the podcast. He spent 21 years on active duty in the United States Marine Corps and became a master sergeant. He was also trained as a Marine sniper. He spent the majority of his career in Force Recon, multiple combat deployments, Afghanistan, Iraq, and he's really one of the MARSOC OGs. He was the team leader of Detachment 1. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, not the golfer, John Dailey.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. I know your home state of North Carolina has been in the news a lot lately, and has had one hell of a rough go these last few weeks. You live on the coast, so you didn't see much of that same devastation. But I imagine the feeling, or I guess I'm asking, what's the feeling like in the state right now?
So many people were impacted. So it's they definitely need whatever support people can give. I have a lot of friends that live up in the mountains. That's where I envision myself, retiring finally. And there's just a lot of devastation up there. So, I have friends who've been up trying to help out with the recovery efforts.
Yeah. Do you get the sense that, for people around the country that hear that and see that, being at least closer to on the ground and knowing people that are going there, that it makes sense for people that are capable and willing to just go there kind of with no plan and try to help? Or is it more like at least pair with a nonprofit that has some sort of structure?
I definitely think so. I think with anything, going without a plan, you can create more problems than you solve. But I know there are some really good charities that are soliciting people with skills to help out with some of the recovery.
Yeah. Always sage advice from the Master Sergeant, as always, right? What's the last full book that you've read?
I just finished Jack Carr's Beirut book. I had the chance to see him, being from Camp Lejeune. He came out for the book release for because there were obviously a lot of, that's where those Marines came from. So there's still a lot of Beirut veterans there, and a lot of them were interviewed for the book. Yeah. So I picked that up, brought it with me, and finished it on the plane flight here.
Oh, nice.
A great book.
Yeah.
Really gets into a section that even as a guy who spent a lifetime in the Marine Corps, I didn't know that much about.
Oh, wow.
So
that's amazing. I recently had a guy named Ben Milligan on, which by the time this airs, it'll already be out. But kind of similarly, he did a book on the history of naval special warfare, and there were so many things that I didn't know. I was like, holy shit. But
what book was that?
It's called The Water Beneath the Walls.
Beneath the Walls, yeah. Great book.
Yeah.
That's a really good book.
Yeah. So what was the biggest takeaway that you got from the book?
And I think the reason that it's not more well known, particularly in Marine Corps history, is that there were a whole lot of fuck ups.
Yeah.
From the president on down. The same lesson that we learn every single time we send people into a conflict. Yeah. We don't have clear objectives, and in this case, we send them as peacekeepers without really the ability to, sending people as peacekeepers in a place that's absolutely unpeaceful.
Yeah.
So the bombing at the American Embassy and then the bombing at the Marine Barracks were both things that. Perhaps the embassy, couldn't have been foreseen, but the Marine Barracks bombing and the loss of a whole lot of Marines could have been foreseen or prevented if they, had a thought things through a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, such a tragic Tragic occurrence, no doubt about it. What's something that you wish you were better at?
I think public speaking.
Really?
You know, that's I always thought I was good at public speaking, but you know, when I've started watching people, I've started having the opportunity more and more with the book to go places and talk. And when you see people that are really, really good at it, you know, it kind of makes you feel inferior. So I've really been, you know, working hard at that, improving my public speaking.
I think if you wear a black turtleneck and a micro earpiece and hold your hands like this,
you can
it automatically adds like 30% competency.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What's something about you that would surprise people?
I'm a pretty boring person, actually.
Maybe that's
I don't think that's terribly surprising. I'm not. I don't think I'm the. And I don't know that there is such a thing, but I think some people have the idea that there's a stereotypical former SOF dude, and I don't think I'm that guy.
Really?
And I'm very happy, you know, sitting at home reading books.
Yeah.
You know, while I don't get to shoot nearly as much as I'd like, I'm not, you know, the guy out at the range every week doing things. So probably just that I'm freaking boring.
Yeah. Well, I think some of it, at least for me, and if I pay attention to guys that I worked with, like as we get older, you kind of almost grow out of that, which maybe that's the wrong way to look at it. But because I'm the same way, like I don't work out, shoot, and do all of those things, certainly to the level that I used to. You know, I mean, I try to stay sharp and in decent shape, but it's not like who I am.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I've, you know, as I've been out now nearly as long as I was in, right? So at a certain point, you kind of, whether you want to or not, you know, especially if you stay around the community, and I have that honor, you kind of take on the role of mentor and coach and things, and you know, in that role, you realize that, you know, at a certain point, the first thing I talk to guys about that are transitioning is you've really got to start looking at yourself differently, right? You can't just be a former SOF guy, right? You've got to be more than that, or else life's going to be really long and boring and hard on you and disappointing, I guess.
Hey guys, I want to take a minute to tell you about the Mic Drop Patreon, where you can get the real mic drop experience the way it's meant to be seen. You get completely uncensored, unfiltered, and uncut episodes with nothing held back, just raw, real conversations directly from me to you, without YouTube censorship. Plus, you'll see it days before anyone else, with early premieres and exclusive bonus content that you won't find anywhere else. You get behind-the-scenes access to the show, including pre- and post-show footage, with me and the guest both in studio and on location, depending on what the guest is into and what we have going on. On top of that, we've got tons of Patreon-only perks, mic drop swag, access to exclusive merch, and the chance to submit your questions to be asked at the end of every episode. You'll also get a sneak peek at our upcoming guests, so you'll know who's in the studio weeks before anyone else. We're constantly releasing new features and dropping new content based on what you want to see. For our top-tier members, you get the same mic drop challenge coin that all of my guests receive from the upcoming show, which will never, ever be for sale. We've got quarterly merch that's sent out directly to you, a monthly Zoom call with me where we talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and an active group chat where we all shoot the shit on a daily basis. All of that for just a few bucks a month to support the show. Right now, we're also offering a 10% discount off an annual subscription, which means that you get more than a free month. I want to say thank you to everyone who has already signed up. Your support means that we get to keep bringing you the content that you love. So if you haven't yet, hit the link in the description or go to patreon.com/micdrop and join the team. I'll see you guys in there. Thank you.
Since the Civil War, dogs have stood alongside our military, proving to be indispensable partners. Our military prioritized ensuring proper canine nutrition for optimal performance, recognizing its vital role in mission success. Team Dog embodies that standard, offering science-based, customizable meal plans tailored to your dog's unique needs. Developed by a former Navy SEAL and canine trainer, Team Dog Food ensures the highest quality nutrition for our canine companions. Improve your dog's well-being. Be your dog's hero with Team Dog.
More good advice. If time travel were possible, where and when would you go?
I think on the one hand, I definitely would, say I'd love to be in the Pacific Campaign in World War II.
Yeah.
But I think I would, when I grew up at a time where like everything, even my early career in the Marine Corps was, full of Vietnam veterans. And I think Vietnam was where the, special operations really kind of got its legs, underneath it. And I think, just growing up reading about Force Recon teams, MACV-SOG teams, the SEALs and the Delta, and, I think that's just phenomenal when you think of the amount of freedom of action and trust. And a lot of it was simply there was no way to keep, you didn't have radios where you could get, calm at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
But, just a handful of guys jumping in with some, maybe with some, Montagnards or whatever, and just patrolling, in a country you're not supposed to be in for days, and that's
pretty
awesome. Pretty badass.
Yeah. Is the desire on the World War II Pacific front, because that's where it was so heavily fought by Marines as opposed to the Med?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's where the Marine Raiders kind of got their start.
Yeah.
And that was really the birth for the U.S. of modern special operations.
Yeah.
Between the Raiders, the UDTs, and the guys in Burma.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite quote?
I'm a guy that loves quotes, but I can never remember them usually. I think, or I can't remember who said it, but I think one of my favorites is the thing I try to remind myself of is the last paragraph of Rudyard Kipling's poem If you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distant run, yours is the earth and all that's in it, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. I think that just, to me, we waste a lot of time. And I think as you get older, you start realizing, hey man, there's a lot of shit that I want to accomplish. I don't have time to waste.
Yeah. I find myself thinking that way with reading. I wasted so much time not reading as a young adult, and now it's just like playing catch up almost. But there's just so much out there. To me, to be able to read a 2,000-year-old book from Roman philosophers, Greek philosophers, etc. It's like what an opportunity.
Oh yeah, I wish, and I talk about it in there, but it was actually a SEAL. It was the guy that we were working for in Iraq that gave me a copy of Meditations.
Yeah.
So the first time I really even got into that, I was 36, 37 years old, and that was life changing.
Yeah,
for me.
It's eye opening. Yeah, it's amazing how timeless it is.
Yeah.
Do you have an EDC that you carry most?
Yeah, I work on base, so we're not allowed to carry on base, so I don't carry much.
Yeah.
And particularly the older that I get, the more I just think is if I need to go somewhere where I think I need to carry, do I need to go there?
Yeah.
But I do a lot of backcountry hiking and things like that. So normally I was born and raised as a Force Recon guy. We were hell-bent 1911 guy. So I'm still a 1911 fan, but I usually just carry a standard Glock 19.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite brand of 1911?
I have a couple of Kimbers.
Yeah.
I'm not a real gun guy, so I'm not into race guns or custom guns or spending a ton of money on guns. I feel like I know I can hit a guy repeatedly pretty quickly at 25 yards, and if he's further away than that, then I could probably run the other way faster than him.
Yeah. What is your morning routine like? What time do you get up, and what do the first 3 hours look like?
So I started, back when I was younger, I would stay up till all hours, and then I just wouldn't sleep. I think that's kind of universal. But now I'm in bed early. I get up at 4:30 and read. I spend a little time reading. I try to start a journaling habit. I've never been great at it. I just kind of write down some facts, how I slept, and I've been really interested in tracking my sleep. Do that for about an hour. I usually during the week, head into work on base. We have a really great gym, so I'll do a run or a ruck, and usually wind up at the gym, work out, and, by that time it's time to start the day.
Yeah. Can you say what you do for the?
Yeah, I am. I'm the Training and Education Branch Director for the Marine Raider Training Center.
Oh, cool.
So I'm kind of like a vice principal.
Okay.
In a way.
Yeah.
I like deal with the young Marines get in trouble or aren't doing well. Just a lot of the administrative stuff. I run our instructor training course, and I've been told that I'm supposed to say that my opinions don't reflect MARSOCs or SOCOMs or anyone else's. They're mine alone.
Yeah. The old stay out of politics routine.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't disagree with that for active military, and before everybody says First Amendment bullshit, whatever, or that's a bullshit opinion and First Amendment. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying I think it's a good idea not to, and I honestly think whether you're a teacher or even in the House of Representatives, I think if you're talking to them, you shouldn't know what political party they are, just by the way that they talk. If you do, I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
Especially with politicians, which I think people maybe would think that that's crazy to think that. But to me, if your goal is to put America first, then it should be irrelevant what side you're on. And talking to somebody, it should just reflect that they want what's best for the country. Where are you originally from?
Originally from Leesburg, Virginia. So now it's kind of a suburb of D.C.
Yeah.
But it was, at the time, it seemed like it was a long way away.
What was growing up in Virginia like? Did you have siblings? Any significant, impactful events happen during your childhood? Play any sports?
Yeah. So I was the oldest with a brother 2 years younger and a sister 2 years younger than him. Lived in the middle of nowhere. We were about maybe like 20 minutes from the West Virginia and Maryland borders, so right in the Appalachian foothills. A pretty idyllic childhood. Grew up with a big family that we just kind of hung out with my mother's family. Like 50 cousins, and that's who we were always around. And Dad played softball, so I was really big into baseball as a kid. But at about third grade, they kind of found religion in a big way, which kind of altered the course of things a little bit. They that just led to me in some ways being like the weird kid at school, because there were just things that I wasn't allowed to do that other kids were able to do.
Well, what's the biggest example of that?
At that point we started. We were going to church, Sunday, like twice on Sunday, Wednesday, and so that like impacted. That's when baseball season ran. So I wouldn't be able to play in every game that we had, or wouldn't be able to make practices, and so it just made John Dailey the weird kid for a while, and then when right as I was going into high school, my parents got divorced. And then we moved into West Virginia, and so starting a brand new high school in a tiny town where everybody were related, or they had all like grown up together. Yeah. It kind of exacerbated being the weird kid. Sure. So I was absolutely sold on the Marine Corps at an early age.
What town in West Virginia was it?
Hedgesville, West Virginia. It's near Martinsburg.
Okay. Yeah. I'm more familiar with West Virginia than you'd probably realize.
Oh.
I've spent a fair bit of time there, but it's such a beautiful state. Mm-hmm. Most of it really is just incredible scenery. But did you do much hunting and shooting and that kind of thing in high school or growing up?
Some, not. My dad wasn't a hunter, but. He would take me shooting. I had uncles that were really big into hunting, so I would go a lot with them as like small game, deer hunting. So that definitely paid. Like I said, I decided at a pretty early age I was going to join the military. I really decided the Marine Corps. By the time I hit high school, and that was really kind of a moving put us where my mom was living was. Very close to the recruiter's office. And this was like 1983 maybe. This was like right when Rambo was coming out. So I decided I'm going to be a Green Beret. So we'd moved. I walk into the recruiter's office, and the Army door, there's like the Navy, maybe the Air Force, and then the far end of the hallway was the Marine, and his door was open. The Army door was closed, and he was just sitting at his desk right there, and he was like, "Hey," he's like, "Why are you knocking on the Army door?" I was like, "Hey, I really want to be a Green Beret, and he's going to be back," and he's like, that fat fuck's never there, He's like, he's probably out doing whatever. He's like, "Why would you want to be a Green Beret?" And he's like, "'Cause of Rambo." I'm like, "Yeah, kind of." He's like, have you ever heard about Force Recon? And I'm like, "No, I hadn't." He's like, "Well, come in," and he's got wings and a bubble on, right? So
wow. How
he was, or why, I guess he had gone from being a Force Recon guy to a recruiter. I don't know.
Yeah.
But, on his wall, he had pictures of like free fall school and sniper school. And so then I was sold. But he was, the way the Marine Corps recruiters operate, he's like, "Nah," he's like, "You want to be in the Army? We don't want you.
Yeah.
Like, get the hell out." So I had to keep coming back and kind of win him over finally.
Wow.
And then was like, I can't even join for like 4 years. So, but he kind of took me under his wing, which pretty much meant like I cleaned out the office and took out the trash. But he gave me stuff to read. He taught me some things. So I was, hugely in his debt. And then, at that point, I was absolutely sold. I was joining the Marine Corps.
Did you go right in out of high school?
Yes.
Yeah. So you went to boot camp, in 87?
87.
Yeah. What was that like?
I was, I think I had really spent my whole 4 years in high school just preparing for it. So, like I said, increasing my shooting, just spending time out in the woods, wrestling, running track and cross country, and just anything that I thought was going to, set me up for success. So I don't say disappointed in boot camp, but it wasn't the like traumatic event that a lot of people talk at it being. I felt I was very well prepared for it. I kind of knew all of the stuff you were supposed to memorize. So I enjoyed it. It sounds kind of crazy, but I had a pretty good time.
I think it says a lot about a 13, 14-year-old kid that decides this is what I want to do and spends all of high school proactively thinking about the things that are going to help prepare you for that. So few kids nowadays would do that. It's actually a pretty heavy metric. I would say it's probably the singularly most important metric in the SEAL teams for kids when they show up. Like if they show up to a recruiter and say, "Hey, I want to be a SEAL. What do I need to do?" Basically, it's like you can just turn around and walk out. Like if you haven't already done everything that you can do before you walked in here, you're not the right fucking guy.
Right.
It's amazing something so simple can be that profound in predicting success, but it is.
Well, especially now that you can research training plans.
Yeah.
So
you kick Marine Corps boot camp in the nuts, and then after that, what did you sign up as? Just as infantry and hoping to go Force Recon? Or?
Yes, yeah, and it wasn't. There wasn't at the time. There wasn't the opportunity.
Yeah.
So while I had there wasn't a whole lot of information on, at the time you had to go to the library and get books or whatever but there was nothing on the selection process and how you get in. I thought that, and he probably asked, the one glaring deficiency that I had was, I go to infantry school, and during infantry school, they come out on a Friday and they're like, "Hey, who wants to go to Recon?" And, a bunch of us throw our hands in the air. And they're like, "All right, well, tomorrow morning, Saturday, day off, 05, if you want to go to take the Recon screening, be standing out here." And like all these hands go down. You guys don't want to give up their day off or don't want to be up at 05. So there's, out of the company, there's maybe 30 or 40 of us that show up. And then there's maybe another 40 or 50 other Marines that are already Marines from infantry units and things that show up to try out. And we start off with like Marine Corps physical fitness tests. So it's like 3-mile run, pull-ups, and set-ups. And if you don't get a perfect score, there's like leave. then I think we ran the O course some, and if you didn't do well enough at that, they're like, get out of here. And then we throw on rucks and do like a 10-mile run on the beach, and if you didn't do well enough at that, so there's maybe 40 of us left, and they're like, all right, now we're going to the pool. And I'm like, oh, fuck. So I had, I thought, and the recruiter probably asked me, hey, can you swim? Like, I grew up, like I said, out in the middle of nowhere, so we didn't have pools. I think I had been in a pool, like at a hotel or something, but, I'd jump in ponds, and, I was capable of not drowning, and so I thought I could swim. But they, put us in this bus, drive us out to this big, 50-meter pool, and in camis, they're like, hey, I jump in 500-meter, breaststroke or side stroke, and I'm like, man, I don't know what either of those things are. So I'm watching everybody else. I'm trying to do my best impression of a breaststroke and just beat the water kind of to death, and eventually make it, well enough that they didn't kick me out. And then we did some other things, and underwater crossovers, which I just not breathe, just. Then by this point, there's maybe 20 of us, and we start there like, hey, we're just going to tread water until people start quitting, and I'm like, all right, I can, float. Then they start pushing us into they're like, a swarm, so we're tighter and tighter, and we're passing bricks around, and I'm like, man, this is fucking bad. The only way I'm going to get through this is to get as far away from the wall as possible. I'm like, grabbing the wall can't be a fucking option. So I like fight my way through the crowd and get over like towards the deep end, and I'm just fucking sinking and trying to get my way back up. And then everything's like super peaceful. And then, I wake up and I'm on the side of the pool, and I had passed out, and they had pulled me out, and so there's this sergeant like screaming at me for
insubordination.
Yeah, for drowning.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, well, go over and talk to I think just Gunny, So I go over, and he was like, you can't fuck swim, can you? He's like, we were watching you, waiting to see when you were going to quit. I was like, well, I wasn't going to quit. And he's like, well, yeah, but if you had a fucking died in there, we would have. Would have been a lot of paperwork for us. I'm like, man. I'm like, well, I'm sorry. Sorry to disappoint. And he's like, man, if I could take you, I would, but I can't. So, go learn to swim, come back, and try again. And so he was like, what do you want to do in the Marine Corps? And the big thing that I wanted to do, I want to be in Force Recon, but I want to be a sniper. I had, like I said, my recruiter had been a sniper, and this was before Carlos Hathcock's book came out about the Marine sniper in Vietnam and everything, but I had read about him, and I was like, man, that I like shooting. I liked that just seemed really cool, and so I wind up getting orders out to California to an infantry unit, and when I get out there, and I don't know if somebody like pulled some strings or what happened, but I show up and I get accidentally put in a weapons company instead of a infantry company. And in the weapons company, the only place that they have infantrymen is in the sniper platoon. And normally, in order to get in the sniper platoon, you like do a deployment as a infantryman. You prove yourself. You do a good job. You apply, and maybe they let you go to their screening, which didn't have swimming. All right, so somehow I like skipped the line on all of that, and I got which didn't make me any friends, but I got put into the sniper platoon because it was easier than, I guess, correcting the error.
Yeah.
And I got, the platoon sergeant fucking hated my guts. Right? He told me, he's like, man, I'm just looking for a way to get you out of here. So he's like, I'm going to put you in this in-house. He was trying to select people who were going to go to sniper school, because at the time it was very difficult to get a quota. So you had to prove yourself and make sure you weren't going to fail. So they had an in-house within the regiment school going, and I missed like the first week of it. So all of kind of the important classes on everything you needed to know. So he stuck me in the middle of that, and was like, hey, when you fail this, you're out of here. And I luckily was able to. The one thing I had was just a really good memory. So I was able to do well enough in that where they kind of begrudgingly let me stay.
Yeah.
And that led to, the opportunity to go to sniper school. And then, I learned how to swim and got the chance to go back.
So what was the time period between when you first got sent away and until you came back?
It was a while. So that was 87 when I had the first chance. And I wound up going to the infantry, deploying as a sniper twice, and then I went on embassy duty. It was just an opportunity that popped up. So I went and worked at embassies in Budapest and Buenos Aires.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't until 93, I think, that I got the opportunity to try out again.
Oh, okay. Tired of squeezing into stiff dress pants at that holiday party? This season, unwrap the gift of comfort with the Game Changer pants from Public Rec. The office pants that look like Monday but feel like Sunday. Imagine clocking in while feeling as cozy as if you were still in bed sipping hot cocoa. With a soft hand feel and smooth drape, these pants are fan favorites for a reason. Whether you're closing deals in the boardroom, navigating holiday travel, or mingling at company parties, the Game Changers will keep you looking sharp and feeling great. Public Rec is the ultimate men's clothing brand for blending comfort and style seamlessly, and trust me, you will not be disappointed. Stay comfortable this holiday season without compromising style, because with Public Rec's Game Changer pants, you really can have it all. And for a limited time, our listeners get 20% off their entire order with the code MICDROP, all one word, all caps, at publicrec.com. That's 20% off with code MICDROP at publicrec.com. I will say, they sent me these Game Changer pants and some shirts, and legitimately, most of the time, like if I'm dressed like with what I'm wearing on shows, or, if you go on your Sunday best at church or whatever, the first thing you want to do when you get home is change out of those clothes. One of the great things about Public Rec, especially these Game Changer pants, you don't feel the need to change out of them. You get home and you can go right into relax mode. So that's it's a phenomenal brand, great products, super comfortable, but they still look sharp. And I encourage you to go to publicrec.com. That's code MICDROP, all one word, all caps, for 20% off. The two deployments as a sniper, assuming not combat related?
No, both just 6-month deployments to Okinawa.
Yeah.
And thereabouts.
Yeah. Anything cool happen at the Budapest or Buenos Aires embassy duty?
It was a really cool. I went to Budapest first, and I got there right as the wall was coming down.
Oh, wow.
So it was a really, really interesting time to be there. So we were used by the Marines that worked at the embassy. I think I turned 21 there, so we're still pretty young guys for the most part. We were used by the Hungarian intelligence services, like when they were training their people, like they would have to follow us. So, and they were not very good at it, So we would, every time we would leave to go on a run or whatever, you'd have some guy in a trench coat like following you, trying to keep up. So it was a really neat time to be there. And while I was there, I got to go to the Berlin Wall, right at Checkpoint Charlie, and chunk off a big piece of it. Yeah,
you still have it?
I have a smaller piece of it. So I went by a fluke. Me, another Marine, this chick I was going out with, who I've now been married to for 30 some years, and another chick. We went. We were just going to go on vacation, and we're just starting Berlin. So the morning that we're flying out, I see in the paper that there was going to be this big concert at the Wall, and it was the Wall concert, right? Roger Waters, the Pink Floyd thing. So, but it was all of the songs were being sung by like Cyndi Lauper and the Hooters, and just like anybody that was who's who of the, back in the
almost like Live Aid.
Yeah, it was kind of a thing like that. Yeah. And so we managed to get our way into that. Go to this fucking awesome concert, and then go to Checkpoint Charlie.
Wow.
Break off. I had because we didn't have a hammer or chisel or whatever. We were just like manhandling massive chunks of rock and throwing it until they would break into something manageable. So I had probably like a 50-pound block in my suitcase. And then as we were traveling along through Europe, we went for a couple of weeks, and we were staying like in hostels and bed and breakfast or whatever. And so every place we went, I would like just beat it and break off a chunk and like give it, everybody wanted it, I was handing it out. So I probably have a little piece.
Yeah, that's super cool.
Left. Yeah.
Is Budapest where you met your wife?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
she's
a pretty common thing then, right? And kind of still is.
Yeah. Yeah. She's an American,
okay.
but she was an American school teacher.
Oh, wow.
Who was teaching at the American school.
Yeah. And you guys are still married?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, I know. It's a
rarity.
Mostly because I was gone so much. I think is what I credit it with, and now it's I think she's realized she's screwed. It's been too long.
Oh, that's classic, man. Wow, what a unique and interesting pre 9/11 set of circumstances. All right, so 93 rolls around, you get a chance to go back. Now you can swim a little better. You go through. I assume you make it.
Yeah. Make it and get. I had a pretty unique set of opportunities because I had been been a sniper. I was a sniper platoon sergeant, so I'd had a little more experience. I'd had the chance to go to like our sniper advanced course and sniper employment officers course, or Army Ranger school, jump school. So I'd had a lot of I kind of came into Force Recon with a lot of
you went to Ranger
experience.
School?
Yeah.
No shit. How was that? Not to get too far detoured, but how was that compared to everything else you'd done?
It was. It's definitely a gut check, and I went. I think it's changed some now, but I don't I can't really say I learned anything like tactically, but I also went to it as I was a kind of a mid-level sergeant. I'd been around a little bit. I'd been a platoon sergeant already, but it definitely you learn about yourself.
Yeah.
What you can do. What I would always look back on that. In Afghanistan, and when I was like, being a little bitch or whatever about something, I'd be like, nothing is ever going to be as hard as what I did. Then.
Yeah.
I'm never going to be as tired or as hungry or as cold or as wet.
So you'd say those significant discomforts were more significant in Ranger School than they were in any MARSOC selection?
I think so.
Well, the Rangers will love to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I think, and that's only because I didn't go through a real selection for MARSOC.
Yeah.
I was just there when we started.
Yeah.
So now, and also Ranger School, just duration wise, is long.
Yeah.
It's a long event.
All right, so you've been around a while. You go back to Force Recon selection. You make it, right? And so this is what, 93, 94?
Yeah.
So what happened after that? Between that and 9/11, what did that span look like?
Yeah, so my first deployment, I was assistant team leader, and our teams there are all enlisted. So your team leader is a sergeant, maybe an E6 staff sergeant. I was a sergeant as an assistant team leader. I started as a point man. I just seniority I'd been in for a good while, and I had a good bit of experience, so I kind of moved up relatively quickly, and got the opportunity to go to dive school, which I'd learned to swim, but still water is the thing that if water can humble anybody. So I was a little bit nervous about that, but the dive school, free fall school, it kind of rounded out the things that I didn't have, and then did the deployments there on the MU. So jumping on ship, and at the time it was Force Recon platoon, SEAL platoon, and we do a lot of interoperability.
Go ahead.
Our main mission. So Force Recon's primary mission is deep reconnaissance, battle space shaping for the force commander. When we went in our preparation for deployment, the other big mission was close quarter battle that we would prep for in extremis hostage rescue, which usually we do in conjunction with the SEAL platoon. gas oil platform seizures, visit board search and seizure.
Yeah, I mean, I was in 96 to 08, and I remember that 4 or 5 years prior to 9/11, there were a number of times, even a deployment where we spent a bunch of time with a Force Recon group in Australia. I don't remember where they were out of or what their nomenclature was, but I remember working with them a bunch. And what was your take on them at that point? Like how you guys stacked up, and like, did you get along? Was it a rivalry?
There was often a pretty big rivalry. So we had a little bit of a case of the ass about the fact that we weren't in SOCOM.
Yeah.
Right? And that was the quick history lesson. I mean, and you know this obviously, but 1987 when SOCOM is formed, the SEALs go in, Green Berets, the Rangers, CCT, PJs. But the Marine Corps says no, we don't.
We're all special operations.
We're not going to give up our Force Recon guys, and that was right when I was coming in. So I didn't know any of this, but later when I got into Force, we were always sitting around in garages drinking beer, pissed about the fact that we didn't have the cool equipment or missions or things. But usually we, once we got on, at the guy level, at the team level, we got along well. So we had, had good relationships on the deployments that I did with the SEAL platoon.
Yeah. All training deployments.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. We did I think my first deployment we did one live VBSS, but it was not opposed. It was just an Iranian flagship that was doing something that it shouldn't, and we both, our platoon and the SEAL platoon, went on, and it was nothing.
Yeah.
Both were pretty low key. I think we did a embassy relief in Africa, in Eritrea, maybe, but for the most part, it was pretty low key.
Yeah. So fast forward to 9/11, where were you when that happened, and how did that impact immediately afterwards your workload and op tempo?
So I was, interestingly enough, I was in Australia. I was sitting in a bar called Kitty O'Shea's, and we had just left on a 6-month deployment, like a routine 6-month deployment, like all the other ones I've done. We're on ship. We get to Australia. It was our first stop. We got off. We were doing some training. That was the first night that we had a time off. So we cleaned our weapons, put everything away, cleaned ourselves. Went out in town. Was sitting in this bar having a couple beers, and the television screen changes from a soccer game to the tower, and it's like 9 p.m. maybe our time, and so the bartender, starts yelling. Everybody's like, what the hell is going on? The Marines who are on shore patrol come running in and yelling, hey, get back to the boats. And so we, eventually finished all our beer first, but made our way back to the ship. And by that, somehow or another, they managed, I think, to get everybody, rallied back up. Thousands of Marines and sailors back on the ships. And by sunrise, we were back at sea.
Wow.
And so we headed straight for, not quite straight, but, we were, by November, we were in Afghanistan.
So you were actually in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What, did you guys steam to the Gulf and then go to Bahrain and like hop up that way, or how did you actually end up there?
So we steamed there. We took a foothold, I guess, in Pakistan. There was a airfield that we went ashore and claimed, I guess. I guess I don't know if it's with or without the approval of the Pakistani government, but that was the first staging base. And then we established Jalalabad, and then moved in from there, flew in to what was called Fob Rhino, kind of south of Kandahar.
Yeah, that's amazing. From that point, and on that first deployment, I mean, you're some of the first American troops in Afghanistan. Did it seem, disorganized, or did you guys have a pretty good idea of what you were doing and do some good stuff?
It was both. Right? I think there was absolute, we had packed for a normal deployment. You in the Gulf going to, kind of bounce around. Some in the Pacific, we'd hit sometime Hong Kong, maybe the Philippines, then we'd get into the Gulf and go to UAE, Canada, Kuwait, whatever the case is. So we, didn't really pack for cold weather.
Yeah.
In fact, the list that the kind of the minimum list they sent out was like had nothing, cold weather gear. I had told my guys, I'm like, hey, make sure we're bringing sleeping bags, make sure we're bringing this and that. And luckily, because it was, November, December in Afghanistan, even in the lowlands, was damn cold.
Yeah.
So somebody like pulled out the only cold weather gear that initially they had to give out was like down in the bowels of the ship. They had like old, like long johns, just white, like little, checkerboard long, and they were all like triple XL.
Yeah.
So all these Marines are running around with, the sleeves hanging out and so that portion of it was pretty disorganized. But we got ashore, and then General Mattis came in, and he was kind of in charge of the operation. So they sent us up, my platoon, to do the first, do a reconnaissance, route reconnaissance up to Kandahar. So that was, really cool. Getting to take off, depart friendly lines. Knowing that you're, really departing friendly lines. Going off on 140, 50 mile, just overland, navigation, finding a route. So we do that, kind of bring everybody else or portions of the MEU up with us. We're kind of staged just outside of Kandahar, and then we get I get tasked with interdicting Taliban traffic on the highway that leads from Kandahar west out toward like Lashkar. So the night of, I think it was December 7th, all right, we go out, we set up, the thing that I was afraid of was that they told me we were off, like everybody was declared hostile, so we could just blast anybody that we wanted. I wasn't really keen on doing that, blasting a car and then finding, women and kids in it. So I was like, we've got to come up with a way to do this without, scarring my guys for life. So my team leaders come up, they're like, hey, let's, treat this like a vehicle, like we would a vehicle takedown, right? If there's a bad guy or you suspect there's a bad guy in the vehicle, how can we do that? So we've got to stop the vehicle. So we get the Marines that we're with to string concertina wire across the highway, just set back like, a little speed trap and talk to the air and wait. And eventually there's a pickup followed by like two or three, I think two, was like a bus and a 5-ton truck that's just packed with people. And the air is watching them come out of Kandahar, come towards us. And every so often, the other two vehicles will pull off, and the truck would drive ahead and scout the route. And so, not necessarily what innocent people or you do. That's So we had a pretty good idea that they were not orphans fleeing Kandahar. So finally, I don't even know what time, like 2 a.m, this pickup comes. We see the lights, and they come screaming down the road, and we had lit the concertina wire with chem lights, so they could see it. So they identify it, and then they're like, screw this, we're going to run through it. And I had never seen it before, but you can't run through concertina wire in a vehicle. So they get, snatched up. As they get pulled to a stop, we bring our vehicle. We were in a Humvee up on the road behind them, close in, and then all kind of pile out. And there's the pickup. It's like a dual cab pickup, just stuffed because it's cold. It's cold as shit. It's below zero. But the back of the pickup was full of shit. But there were 3 dudes kind of sitting, looking at us. And so damn near me to you. And the 2 guys on either side were, like younger dudes, and they were like totally bundled up. They had weapons, you could tell, but the weapons were all wrapped up in blankets. The dude in the middle, you could tell, was, not his first rodeo. So he's big beard, but and his hands are got to be cold as fuck. But he's got them, he has his AK out. And so he, I try to like sling some verbiage at him, but they're not, my Afghani is non-existent really. So it's funny, and this is, something that we'd been taught about, something I'd never experienced until that point. But, most people who've been in especially a close range gunfight, will, say that, yeah, that happened to me, is how like time just slows down to a crawl. And I felt like I was moving really fast and everything around me was just going so slow. So this old guy, old Mooj, he's trying to press his weapon out, and I'm like, this is like comically slow. Like I'm thinking about other things, and then finally I decided, all right, well, it's time to, kind of go to work and let him have it. And then the other guys, and then these guys start piling out of the front of this pickup, because they're stuffed in there. It must have been like the guys who lost the coin toss that had to ride in the back. But so we're dropping them. They're like falling into the concertina wire. It's pretty ugly. And then the bed of the truck just like burst into flames. So we're like, oh shit. It starts growing rapidly. So I'm like, hey, let's start bounding back. We're not taking any more fire. We start moving back, and then again, I'm like, holy shit, how's anybody still alive? This truck is like totally engulfed. But it was just, they were cooking off, rounds cooking off. And then RPGs start launching.
So it was a group of bad dudes loaded to the gills.
Yeah. So we sort that out, let it burn, and then call in air on the other two vehicles. And yeah, we wound up that night, I think there were close to 100 Taliban that we took out, like, dude, all told.
Wow.
A lot of, most of them with air. But
so where were the other two vehicles in relation to where you were at that time?
They were a couple clicks back, and they had like pulled off the road. So that's the kind of the tactic that they were using.
Yeah.
So them, we didn't have eyes on them, but we had air stacked up like crazy.
Wow.
So it was, and at that point there had been another back at Fob Rhino where we had come from. There was a gunfight, and this was I think right about the same time that the Tora Bora fight was going on. So there was these air was in kind of short supply, but we had them pretty enough stacked up that they were keeping eyes on, and we're able to just blast those guys pretty easily.
So with that, at this point, you've been in the military well over 10 years, done a ton of training, and now it's like fucking go time. It's shortly after 9/11, which, the pulse and the emotion of the nation was very different and ready to get some. How was that afterward, kind of reflecting on what had just happened?
It was pretty fucking awesome. It was.
I'm not going to mix words.
No, but for me, I was missed because I was on embassy duty. I missed the Gulf War, and there wasn't a ton of it to miss. But I was really, really bummed by that. So when I came back from that, there were young guys that had, whether they'd actually like seen combat or not, they'd kind of been in combat. So I'm like, man, I kind of missed my chance. Yeah. And then we came, the infantry unit that I was in right before I went to Force, we got tapped to go to Somalia, and then we got pulled off of it at the last minute. So while we were sitting there waiting for those vehicles to come, that night in Afghanistan, I was joking with my guys. I'm like, man, I'm like a bullet fucking repellent. Like it's going to be a bunch of old ladies in a car when they finally show up, and we're going to, wish them well, send them on their way. So I was kind of as surprised as anybody. But one of the things, and that really shaped just the way I viewed a lot of things thereafter. I had been raised by Recon Marines that were just adamant about training really, really hard. Making sure that you don't train until get it right, train until you can't get it wrong kind of mentality. And so I had, as a platoon sergeant with those guys, that's the way I had tried to make sure I had trained them. And after, just recognizing, like I said, those, and whenever we went through close quarter battle training, they talked about the Jeff Cooper color codes, the mental preparedness color codes, condition white, yellow, green, or black, white, red, orange, all those. And the FBI would always come in. We'd have some FBI agents that would come and talk about combat mindset, and the time distortion and visual perception, narrowing, auditory exclusion, all of those things. And so I knew what was happening while they were happening, but I was fascinated by it. And so after, the next day, after we got a little bit of sleep, I sat down individually with each of my guys and I'm like, hey man, what did you experience? Did you have this? Did you have this? And it was really interesting that almost everybody had experienced a lot of the same things. So when I got back from that deployment, I had been at this point I'd been at Force Recon for so long. They were like, man, you got to go somewhere. So I went to be an instructor and ran our sniper school and our urban sniper school and our reconnaissance course, and tried to bring as many of those lessons into the training as possible.
Going back to that deployment after that checkpoint gunfight, how much longer were you in country, and were there any other gunfights that you got in?
No, so we weren't there very long at all. We got there in November. By January, we were gone. Another MEU had come in and replaced us, and so we went there for long. The other interesting thing that happened while we were there was right after we got back from that, Tora Bora had happened, and Michael Spann, the CIA officer who was a former Marine, had been killed. And they had in that fight they'd captured this jackass named John Walker Lindh.
Yeah, I remember that.
So he's an American, all right, that had gone to join the Taliban. At some point, well prior to 9/11.
Yeah.
And so he gets captured there. They're going to bring him down to our FOB Rhino, and the MEU commander is a great guy named later General Waldhauser. He was, like I said, emotions were very, very high. He was very worried that if word got out that there's this, an American traitor in the camp, that some people may decide to take matters.
Justice.
Yeah. So he came to us and was like, hey, he had been a recon Marine back in his younger days, and was like, hey, I need you guys to keep this on the down low. I need you guys to guard him. And the agency was going to be starting to interrogate him, and they're like, make sure that they don't do anything that they're not supposed to be doing. So he had been shot in the leg. So they brought him in, they gave him medical attention, and then we got put in charge of
making sure he doesn't get
drugged
behind the fucking vehicle.
Yeah. And not a.
Did you interact with him at all?
I talked to him a little bit, and
what was that like?
He was like it was almost like he could barely speak English.
Wow.
He was like his, which I don't know how long he'd been there, but the idea that you could, he wasn't that bright, is what I took away from it. Yeah. He was. It was weird. On the one hand, I absolutely wanted to beat him to death. On the other hand, we couldn't. All right, I had to make sure that nobody beat him to death. So yeah, it was weird interacting with. I was so pissed that I really didn't want to talk to him, but I was also super curious. Yeah. So I tried to talk to him a little bit, and he either feigning stupidity or inability to speak English, but he was just asking for food, asking for water, and I'm like, oh, fuck you, dude.
Yeah. Do you know whatever ended up happening to him?
There was a lawsuit. I didn't have to go, but my platoon commander, the captain, actually had to go testify in it. And from what I gathered, he was released from prison. I think he's in Ireland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I think they gave him safe haven or something.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so you get back from that deployment. You take kind of the lessons learned both in your already fairly long, storied career within Marine Special Operations, and you build that or weave it into the schoolhouse. You were there for a few years, and then I guess kind of synopsize your time there. What was that like?
Yeah, I wasn't even there for a year probably.
Okay.
So I get there, and when we get back, so probably early '02, and about that time, kind of unbeknownst to me, the kind of wheels were already in motion. That the Donald Rumsfeld, who's Secretary of Defense, had said, we need more special operations. So the SF was told to make more, another battalion or whatever they made or grew. I don't know what they grew to. The SEALs were told to make more teams, and he told the Marine Corps, this time you're going to participate. And the Marine Corps was like, no, we're good. And he was like, yeah, you're going. I'm not stuttering. You're going to do this thing. So, and SOCOM was not excited either, from everything I gathered. They were like, nah, we don't need Marines. So then it was mostly Army, right? I mean, the SEALs were actually kind of saw it, I think, as a opportunity to kind of get some support, because the Army is, there's the joke that how do you spell SOCOM, A-R-M-Y, because it's like 75% Army. So I think early on, the Naval Special Warfare was like, hey, we can get some Marines in, we can have
a little
go
more
head to head, yeah. So it went back and forth with the Marine Corps saying no, and eventually the decision that was reached was the Marine Corps would provide a proof of concept. 2 years. It's supposed to be an 87-man detachment, and it was about 30 Force Recon guys, about 30 Intel guys, which really was our, made us just a ton of money. And we were very, very heavy, across all of the INTs, right? Intel functions from HUMINT, SIGINT, GEOINT. And then everybody else was all the other cats and dog communicators and JTACs and EOD and things that you need to, logistics guys and admin guys. So I had only been, at the Special Operations Training Group running the school for about a year, and the guy who was put in charge of it, the guy Colonel Coates, came to me and was like, hey, do you, this thing is happening, and there'd been rumors, right? But he was like, yeah, it's real. I'm in charge of it. You want a team? And I'm like, of course. What do you say to an offer like that? So yeah, it was a huge honor to be. We started off with 4 teams, and of the 4 of us that were picked, I was, even though I at this point had like 14 years in the Marine Corps, 15 maybe, I was by far the junior guy.
Wow!
So it was pretty awesome to be selected.
Yeah. Looking back on the weaving of MARSOC into SOCOM, do you think that ultimately that was a good decision? Can you imagine if that hadn't happened and they had stayed separate, what it would be like?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great decision. I think the Marine Corps got a whole lot to offer. I think that's been proven over the last 17 years of MARSOC's existence. And for a while, the early years of MARSOC, it was kind of, there were always rumors that, hey, we're going to do away with it. It's a failed experiment or whatever. But I think by now the Raiders have absolutely proven themselves. So it was just a phenomenal, opportunity to be there at the ground level.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like a huge honor. That's such a cool deal. I mean, to be one of the original 4 teams of MARSOC is pretty special. What was the first experience deployment-wise like as a MARSOC Raider?
So, and we weren't called MARSOC, we weren't, when we deployed. So we were just called, as a long name, we were U.S. Marine Corps Special Operations Command Detachment 1. For the most part, we were just called Det 1. So we deployed, initially during our workup, we were either told or we assumed that we were going to go to Afghanistan. So we were really prepping for that. And then we had a two-year proof of concept. So we had about 6 months to train up and then deploy and then come back and figure out what was next. So we we're told that we're going to go to Iraq, we would be a task unit underneath a NSW TG-1. So
that's a Naval Special Warfare, by the way,
yes.
for the listener.
So we,
which is the SEAL teams,
right?
For the other listeners.
So we deployed to Baghdad, and
this is in 04?
04. Yeah, we were put in the task group was right in Baghdad at the airport, and there had not been a SEAL platoon stationed there. They were out, kind of spread out throughout the other places. So when we got there was really nobody to kind of rip TOA with, anybody to say, here's target packages, here's...
There's no turnover, basically.
No. So it was Jocko was the guy that turned over with us, and I had deployed with him when he was enlisted back in the day. So
really?
We kind of knew each other a little bit.
Did you ever grapple with him back then?
No. We got... we didn't... We just spent a lot of time on that deployment grappling, just kind of, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu had become really big. But I think he had left by that point. So he was like, there's really nothing to give you a way of targets or anything. So we really had to kind of start from scratch and make our own luck, if you will.
Did you guys have that same beefed up contingent of intel guys with you then also?
Well, we did. We went there with them, and the guy who would be our boss at the task group was a guy, Commander Bill Wilson, who went on later he was in charge of the center at the NSW Center. Great guy. I stay in touch with him. And he wound up being a huge, supporter of ours and really bent over backwards to make sure that we had everything. But we showed up with, just like at the team level, my team, my 6-man team, I had, my own human guy, my own SIGINT guys, and he was like, hey, you all work for me. You all have got a lot of intel. I don't have very much. So he's just started like taking our guys and assigning them to sending them out to the SEAL platoons across the country. And, of course, we were pissed off at that. But it wound up being like a really good thing because, now we had like the only people that were kind of synthesizing intel from all across Iraq. So we started getting, and that's how kind of our first mission came to be. There was one of the intel guys was just digging through reports and was like, hey, an interpreter, an Iraqi interpreter that was working with us had been killed. And he was like, I'd read something else. And he starts calling and realized he puts together this, like big matrix that over a number of months there had been like 20 Iraqi interpreters working with the U.S. that had been like executed. So he starts doing, kind of this, what intel people do, right? And it's like, hey, they all have this, this one person in common. You can like draw lines to all of them to this one interpreter. And that interpreter happened to be like kind of in the Baghdad area. And so I had been...
Do you know who he was an interpreter for?
Well, he was a she.
Oh.
And she was not for soft units, but so during our workup, what I had told my guys, my team was that partially because I was, the junior team leader, like I said, but I'm like, my thing was always, hey, we'll do windows, right? If there's a shitty job, it doesn't matter, we'll do it. So, during our workup, that had normally taken the form of doing reconnaissance and surveillance on targets. Everybody wants to come in and, fly in on the helo, shoot things up and fly out. But I'm like, hey, if there's, an RNS mission, we'll do it. So I had, kind of consequently, we had become the team, the kind of the go-to team for anything that was kind of unusual or out of the ordinary. So when this mission comes up, all the other dudes are like, hey, we want to do it. And I'm like, oh, fuck you guys. I've, spent a lot of nights freezing, spent a lot of time doing, a lot of bullshit or less sexy missions, I guess. So it wound up being me, one of our human guys, another Marine, a SEAL who was had some experience in the area. And so we go out, supposed to be pretty quick, in and out, just drive out. And we also had to bring a Polish Grom operative because that was the only female that we could find.
Oh, wow.
So there was this Polish Grom chick, Kate, who was like, it killed more people than bone cancer. Right?
Wow.
Kate was one of their snipers. She was a badass. So we civvy vehicles and drive out in the middle of Baghdad in the middle of the workday and show up at this place where these contract company works, and the lady's supposed to work there, but she's not. They're like, nah, we sent her out to this other place. So we drive out to this other place, and when we get there, she's not there, somewhere else. And so we, by this point, we've gotten, an hour or more, outside of Baghdad. Finally come to an Army unit where she had been interpreting, and she had recently quit, which seemed a little suspicious, right? So, but we were like, hey, call her up and tell her that you still owe her a paycheck or whatever, see if she'll come in. And so they get a hold of her. She's like, yeah, I'll come in. And like an hour later, this lady shows up. She walks in, we let her pull up. She has a man with her driving her who was armed. When he came up to the gate, they searched him and took, he had a 1911 on him, which was an old 1911 made by Singer. Wow. The Singer sewing machine factory back, like a pre-World War II 1911, which we kept and it's like a little memento of our first as the unit. But when she gets there, she jumps out of the car, and it's not at all what I expect. She's like probably late 50s, like gray hair, just looks like somebody's grandmother. She walks into this room, and Kate just thumps her,
really
bags her, flex cuffs her, brings her back out.
Kate was a bad bitch, huh?
Kate was a badass. Stuffed her in the vehicle, and she has no idea what's going on. We bring along the guy for good measure, get him back to, and at this point we still had our own detention facility, and we had our people doing the interrogation. And it quickly becomes apparent that she was responsible for kind of fingering all these interpreters, but she had been unwitting in it, right? She had had some, it's kind of the opposite of like a honeypot fucking thing. Some, hot-looking Iraqi dude had befriended her, and she was like, hey, I need to hire some interpreters. Can you give me some names? And she just like handed over the company phone book.
Wow.
All right. And so she was really pissed. She was absolutely distraught once she figured out what had happened. So she was like, that I'll give you fucking whatever you want on that guy. And the guy who was driving her was like, yeah. He's like, I know him. He went with us. So our first raid, came out of that.
Oh wow.
So we bring him with us. He's like, yeah, that's the dude. And we grab him and we'd hit his house and his place of business simultaneously, and it was full of bomb-making material and things like that. So,
what was his place of business? Like, what business?
It was, I think it was like a photocopy place, but he was also copying like propaganda type stuff, CDs and things. But yeah, in the back, a bunch of bomb making.
Did you find him handsome?
He was not a bad looking guy.
So you could see how she got wrapped up.
Yeah, I mean it's like I said, she was not a whole lot to look at, so I don't think it took a lot.
Yeah.
But that and then we hit him, and that led on to so it really, for me, I'd spend as many your younger days, you kind of maybe don't give the intel guys the credit that they deserve, but they absolutely, set the stage for our success.
Yeah. For the rest of that deployment, were there any other follow-on operations that you did that were super memorable or that you would share?
Yeah, quite a few. I mean, they were, we wound up just that, hitting a lot of, because we were, fortunate enough to be sent after pretty high value targets. So the first one that kind of came around not as a result of that, but shortly after that, there had been this guy Nick Berg. Do you remember that name? Mm-hmm. So he was an American citizen who went to Iraq as a satellite repair guy or something. He wasn't working for the government, so he was kind of there on his own, which was a little odd to begin with. But we were there. We got there just right after the Blackwater contractors got hit, and so we were pissed. Like Scott Halverson, I don't know if you knew him.
Oh yeah,
I knew him pretty well. So we were really pissed about that. But that happened, and then we got there right as the Abu Ghraib scandal kind of broke. And as a result of that, there was this guy, Nick Berg, who had, crazy story, but he had gotten rolled up by, and the reports differ on whether it was the military or whether it was our military or the Iraqi military, but they were kind of questioning, why the hell are you here, right, in the middle of a war when you're an American and you're not working for the government. They cut him loose, and they told him that he should go home if he knew what was good for him. He obviously didn't know what was good for him, so the next people that rolled him up was fucking Zarqawi. So they filmed Zarqawi cutting his fucking head off. So that was, we just got in the country. I think it was the day that we got in the country. There was a vehicle patrol that was out, Army patrol, and they find his body. His head cut off, and they had dressed him it was kind of in response to the Abu G stuff. So he was like in a orange jumpsuit like the prisoners were there, no head, just fucking laying there on an overpass. So we'd been there in town for not long, and we got, I think it was intel that we, again, one of the guys got during interrogation. They're like, hey, I know one of the guys that's responsible for this. So we're like, fuck yeah, let's go get this guy. So we went like 2 a.m, go to his house, his second floor apartment. We hit it, and there's just stacks of DVDs of the head getting cut off. This guy was making copies, but there was also a bag of the bloody clothes that the dude had been wearing. So we grabbed this guy, and he's pretty obviously one of the guys involved. So that was like incredibly rewarding, to get him. And then,
do you know what happened to him?
No, we handed him off, and so the Nick Berg guy, though, the more I was, while I was writing the book, I went, trying to research and make sure that I knew what I was talking about. What was, post 9/11, he was interviewed because there was an email sent from his computer, to one of the 9/11 terrorists. And when he was questioned about it, like the FBI shows up at his house, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I was riding a bus while I was in college, and this dude just like, hey man, can I borrow your computer to send an email?" And that's what he credited it to. And maybe that that just seems very odd. Yeah. Right. I don't think I would let some random dude on a computer or on the bus borrow my computer to send an email. Yeah. But I'm not I don't know. So there was kind of questions around that guy, but that was memorable. There were 2 HVTs that we were tracking for kind of an extended period of time, like throughout the entire deployment, that we wound up catching both of them, which was memorable. Obviously, that was rewarding. I mean, it was our last mission was actually finally catching this guy that everybody had been after. And we, again, it was one of our human guys that had recruited a source. And the thing that any source around this guy was, we had 2 sources, like the families all wiped out. And then we got another source that was close, and that he got skittish, and him and his family fled the country. And so we finally got a guy driving for him, and we wind up, the last mission that we do was rolling this guy up. And as soon as we got back, he was, higher, pulled him away from us. So we never really got kind of the full picture of how important he was, but that was kind of cool.
Do you know, I guess looking back on it now, any idea what his deal was?
He was one of the deck of cards guys.
Okay.
So he had been, very kind of influential in the anti-government forces.
Yeah.
So we did that. I mean, mostly, direct action missions. For a while, we were tasked with guarding the Iraqi interim government.
Yeah.
So we had one of the vice presidents. They had two. We had a Kurdish vice president that we were responsible for keeping alive, and like everybody, Sunni or Shia, they mostly hate Iraqis hate the Kurds for the most part. So, like a lot of people wanted him dead. So that was actually when that happened. Like all of the SEAL teams got pulled in, and we just got put on security detail. So that was interesting. I got to run the advance team for that. So it was just a whole lot of site set up, a lot of recon.
Yeah. Were any of the other direct actions that you went on, did you get into big gunfights on any of them?
We didn't. And I credit a lot of it to we would just go a lot later than anybody else. I mean, we would hit like 2 a.m, and there was only, I couldn't count the number of times that we, went in and grabbed the dude, and he was like fumbling trying to get to his AK or, his pistol under his bed. We only, once we had a little breaching accident that kind of slowed up things, and then this guy who was another, former regime element general that, and it was one that we wouldn't have suspected. I mean, he was like a general, a really old guy, and he got alerted because a breach kind of low ordered on the door, and one of our guys got injured. But when we got in the door, he was just blasting, hitting one of our corpsmen actually in the calf with it was like a bullshit Makarov round or whatever. But so he was the only guy that we killed on a raid. Yeah. Everybody else we were able to bring back with us.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like the use of the kind of heavy intel presence that you had there really paid off big dividends for kind of the traditional special operations role of gathering, collecting your own intel and acting on it, and then even doing after or follow-ons based on what you find there, and et cetera. Of all the raids that you went on, was there ever anything that you found in any of the residences or targets that was really surprising, like whether it was weird or shocking or you couldn't believe was there? Like, did anything stand out?
We had a lot of bomb makers that we were going after, especially as they were like preparing for the actual elections. There's a huge uptick in bomb makers. So I think sometimes just the massive caches of explosves.
Was most of it fertilizer type stuff, or
there's a good bit of that, and then a lot of like repurposed ordnance.
Yeah. Artillery and shit.
Yeah. There was what else? I mean, the one guy that we'd gone off after, his arm, we found it. He was a one-armed guy, and so we knew, and that was the only thing we knew about him. He was a one-armed bomb maker, and so by the time we get in the house, and I was on external security with this one, they're like, hey, his arm's here, but he's not. And there was like, he was in the process of building a bomb. And this was out in the farmlands. So we had, me and another guy were in a Humvee, and we had driven down a canal. And there was, the target was over here. There was a big, one of the water-filled like shit ditches. So, and I'm short, man. So I probably wasn't the best guy, but the aircraft that we have overhead was like, hey, there's some dudes running through the field, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm the best in position to go after him. So the guy who's manning the gun is like, 6'5". He's like, hey, man, want me to go? I'm like, no, I got it. Because I just think it would be cool to catch this guy. So I assume that the little shit ditch is
couple
feet. No, I jump in and just I go down, and full kit, full body armor, weapon, everything, and I trying to keep my weapon up, and at this point, I can tread water a little bit better, but I'm like, trying to keep it out of my mouth, get across, and it's wider than I thought to, I'm trying to pull myself out of it, and now I'm really pissed. I'm like, I'll beat this guy to death when I catch him, but I don't. So I, hit my strobe, and the aircraft is kind of vectoring me over to him. Finally, get to this guy, and I'm like, I can't even remember it now, but I'm like, put your hands up. And I'm like, put your fucking hands up. And then one hand goes up, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I'm like, hey, I got our guy. He's only got one fucking arm.
That's like some shit out of a movie. One arm bomb maker.
Yeah.
I love it. So it sounds like a pretty fruitful deployment, one that firing on all cylinders, got a lot of good work and learned quite a bit off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other big opportunity that we had was I got to take a sniper team, or a pretty large team, in Najaf.
Oh, really?
When that kicked off, and
on that same deployment.
Yeah.
Did you guys get some good work in?
Yeah, we did. It was that was probably the coolest thing overall. The Najaf is important, I guess. The mosque there is it's like the third holiest site in Islam, because it's supposedly where the successor to Muhammad is buried, right? So it's this big fuck off mosque in a town that's old as shit. To the west, I guess, of the town is the largest cemetery in the world. And to the outskirts of that was the Marine Expeditionary Unit, right? And they were, this cemetery is, subterranean. It's buildings like mausoleums. It's like a city. I mean, it's freaking massive. I think there's millions of people buried. They've been buried there for thousands of years. So it's, it's like a city, but with no rhyme or reason, and just tight little passageways. I mean, some of them you wouldn't be able to turn around with a weapon. So the Mahdi army decides they're gonna, make a stand there inside the it's Sadr and his crew. So he's got 7,000 fucking homeboys inside, based out of this mosque. And so the MEU has come in, and there's a couple thousand Marines that are, and it's if they have to fight in this cemetery, it's going to be, there's no way around it. It's going to be a fucking bloodbath, right? There's the 117 Army Cav is kind of who we're attached to, and they're getting ready to, in their Bradleys and everything, roll in. There's some other Army units around us, but the big concern is destroying this mosque. If we fuck this mosque up, there's going to be a massive, outcry. But it's where they're hanging out, right? They've got, just thousands of knuckleheads hanging out inside this mosque compound. So the only people that were allowed to kind of operate inside of a protective ring they'd put around it were snipers and soft snipers, essentially. So I had 6 or 7 dudes with me. The SEALs had a team. The GROM had a team, and there were a couple of SF guys running around. So it was really kind of, we were tasked with, hey, just attrit these motherfuckers and get them to give up, hopefully. So we move in, and we just start doing that. That was just a insane time. I mean, it was.
How long were you in that position?
For about a week. I mean, we were kind of moving, every night.
But taking a lot of shots.
Yeah. We had, after it was all rolled up between all of us, we had killed close to what the reports were, 100 of their snipers, and then hundreds of fucking dudes. I mean, we were just, and eventually they gave up. They're like, hey, we're gonna put our weapons down and
I assume primarily because of your ability to defeat their snipers and just pick them off without any real intrusion into the city.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was, it kept a lot of guys from having to fight some really, really bloody battle. There's still some, fighting, obviously, around there. But between that and, our JTACs being able to, come in and operate precisely, in proximity to the mosque.
In that sniper Overwatch stuff, did you take shots?
Yeah.
Yeah. About how many? Any idea? Or I guess, certainly don't have to answer that. It just if you want to, great. Do any of the shots stand out as memorable?
Yeah, there's one, and really, the funny thing is, it's the whole reason this book exists.
Yeah.
So the very first morning that we got in, we had moved in, under cover of darkness. Obviously, moved into a building that allowed us kind of observation down into the mosque, and we were busy setting up security, setting up positions, and I took my assistant team leader up onto the roof of the building with me. I'm like, hey, let's get up here, and he was taking some photos, and we transmitting the photos back, and as the sun started coming up, I got down behind the gun, and they weren't moving at night. We were ready to take shots at night, but there was just nothing going on. So the sun comes up, and the frickin' call to prayer goes, which is like eerie as fuck in a city where there's like nothing. And then once the sun's kind of fully up, I catch something out of the corner of my eye, and I look over, and there's like movement on the street. I look over, and there's what had been like a little shop or cafe or something. So there's little plastic, like shitty tables, with little plastic chairs. And this old guy comes and takes a chair down, sits down, and another guy comes out, and he's got a rifle slung. They sit down, and they're talking. And I'm like, well, that's, it's, we were kind of led to believe that anybody there was bad,
at that point.
Bad guys. Yeah. People had, left their houses. There was, shit all over the place because people had fled. Then this kid comes out with a fucking RPK, and he's standing there holding security.
When you say kid, do you know about how
he was? That's the thing, and I talk about it. He was not nearly as young as he is in my head. Right? He was, because at the time my son was, I think, about 8 or 9, and this kid was a teenager. He had a little bit of a beard, okay, right? But he was probably, 15, 16 at least. He was definitely what we call the fighting age male or a military age male. So I shot him, and that's definitely the one that stands out. Partially because he was the first guy I'd shot other people, but he was the first one I shot with a sniper rifle, just kind of looking at him. Yeah. And it was the same thing. Kind of time slowed down. The from him getting hit to falling and looking at his face. It not in a bad way really, but it's kind of stuck with me always.
Did you have complete autonomy to take that shot? Did you have to get?
Yeah.
And from the time he presented himself and you saw him until you took the shot, do you remember about how much time took place?
Again, it probably less than it seemed like, because time was kind of stretched. But it would have been less than a minute.
Yeah.
And I had every intention of shooting him and then kind of coming back and hitting the two at the table. And I kind of got fixated on him. And by the time I came back, they had bolted.
Yeah.
So, but that kind of, broke the, what spell or whatever. And then after that, it was game on. And
ballpark, how many other sniper shots you took in a similar fashion? Dozens?
Not a dozen.
Dozen?
Yeah.
What was your sniper rifle?
So we had the Mark 11, SR-25 bolt gun. So primarily that's what I was carrying. And we had just got those. The Marine Corps didn't have them. So it was
that's
one
a
of
Knight's
those.
armament, right?
Yeah. And it was interesting. I think we were the first people to take the Horus reticle. We'd met those guys at the SHOT Show like a couple months before we deployed.
Oh, wow.
And there's a guy, Todd Hodnett, who's kind of really well known now as a shooting instructor, a long range guru. And he was working for them. And we started talking to him, and he's like, man, we had been raised to believe in the Marine Corps that the universal scope was God's gift. Yeah. But man, once we started, learning the Horus reticle and how it worked, we're like, man, we've got to have some of these. So we still had some of our M40s, bolt guns, the Sasser. We had one of those, and we had also picked up, I think, from the Horus guys, or at least they'd introduced us to it, a Shytac 408 intervention rifle that wound up. I mean, it's a pretty phenomenal, long range gun, but it was kind of too much gun for the distances. I mean, most of the shots there, like that shot was 200 yards, and most of them you just couldn't see that far.
Yeah. What were you using any special ammo?
Not for the sniper rifles.
Just ball or
just
match grade?
long range, match 7.62.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. Is it something that shot in particular, because it was the first behind glass kind of intimate sniper shot that you took, is that something that you still think of very often?
I do, and I think it's because this is 2004. I had, joined a sniper platoon in 1987.
Yeah.
I went to sniper school in 89. So I had a large part of my adult life had been, built around the idea that, hey, you're training to do this thing.
Yeah.
And so finally actually doing it, it's on the one hand, it's like, it's kind of what you expect. On the other hand, it's kind of anticlimactic. But I think it, not in a way that it fucks with me, but just in a way that it's something that I think about.
Yeah. Were any of the shots that you took not clean? Like, did any of them not do the job, and you don't know what the fuck happened to them afterwards, or did you hit everybody?
Like I said, most of them are pretty short. So there was one, and I was impressed with, some of their snipers. We had started, most of our training, sniper training, was like Vietnam based. Like I said, it's like Carlos Hathcock and Chuck Maloney and jungle, shooting people in the jungle. The course that I ran, the urban sniper course, was really primarily focused on taking the shots in urban areas, not really on counter sniper stuff, which was a mistake. We probably should have talked more about that. But, when we got there and started seeing, some of their snipers were pretty good. But it started bringing back all of these things I'd read, about like Stalingrad and the sniper battles and between the Russians and the Germans especially. And the one point, it was like the second day, we're taking pretty effective fire. I mean, nobody's getting hit, but they're somebody knows what they're doing, and they're getting relatively close. And all of us are like down glass to the front. We're like, man, I just can't see anything. And then somebody's like, hey, wait a second. And you could see this one, they point out this building, and you can see this brick like get pulled out. And the guy like takes a shot, brick goes back in, then he goes to another room and pulls out a brick. And we're like, son of a bitch. Like, that's pretty fucking cool. So we bring up the 50 cal, and there was an Army sniper team that was not too far from us. We got a hold of them and brought them up. So we had like talking, Barrett 50 cals, and just waited until the brick came out again, and just just went through like 2 mags apiece and basically rubbled the wall, brought the wall down. And but we didn't, we're pretty confident, that we got them, but weren't 100%.
Yeah. Wow, that's intense, man.
Yeah.
That's some solid sniper work. That seems like a pretty epic operation.
It was. I mean, that was absolutely the highlight, for me of the deployment. It was, an opportunity to be run the. I was in charge, right? I had my guys and getting to manage, a significant chunk of an operation. And I said, knowing that, our success was going to mean that all the Marines, kind of camped outside the cemetery weren't going to have to go into it and face that.
Yeah. Did that operation have a name?
I don't think so. I think it was just called the Battle of Najaf.
Yeah.
There were 2. So this was the second.
Okay.
There may have been more after
that. It was
that,
04 or 05?
This was 04.
04.
So I think there had been one earlier, in like 02. There had been a fight there.
Maybe late 03 because
maybe.
we didn't go in until spring of 03.
Oh, yeah, you're right. I think it was.
Yeah. All right, so you wrap that deployment up. You come home. How many more combat deployments did you do after that one?
That was it.
That was it, okay.
So, we come back, and we're kind of just waiting.
Yeah.
Right. Every day there would be another rumor. Right.
Yeah.
So we were going to, for a while, the smart money was that we were going to redeploy, go to Afghanistan. So we started really kind of looking for like what our niche kind of would be there, and we really thought like going kind of long range reconnaissance or doing, there's always difficulty in Afghanistan of putting people out, getting eyes on, long enough to bring somebody in to hit the target, right?
Yeah.
Because regardless, the Afghans know, that somebody's there, right? And there's obviously been, the disastrous patrols like that. So our thought was, if we could get in with enough, kind of enough ass to pinpoint a target and then hit it, just go straight into an assault. So we started going like the Marine Corps has a Mountain Training Center in Bridgeport, California. So we started just spending tons of time up there, like trying to travel as light as possible, figuring out ways to practice this technique. And then, there was rumor the switched and we were going to hold like our own assessment, and then we were going to kind of make a detachment too. So the powers that be were like, hey, we need to build an assessment selection criteria, and then we've got to go through it. So half of us kind of ran it, half of us actually went through it. I got to be in the half that went through it, and then they decided, oh, we're not going to do that. So there was like another selection, and then eventually, after a while, and we're just like, hey man, if we're not going to deploy, let us do something. The decision was made that MARSOC, we were going to stand up a full component to SOCOM.
Yeah.
So it was a little, like our unit, Det 1, just disbanded. Some of us then went to MARSOC. Some guys retired. Some guys got out or went other places. But I went out, and I had spent my whole career pretty much at Pendleton in California. I went out to Camp Lejeune and was kind of tasked with starting the school and implementing as many of the lessons that we had learned into the school.
All right, so you are starting the MARSOC training school basically, and that's a pretty heavy load on anybody's shoulders. And I know it wasn't just you, but I mean, were there kind of some basic principles that you thought of during that process that you said to yourself, like, these have to be an integral part of training, or like, how did you strategize how to create that?
Right. So we weren't starting it from scratch. We were starting it from what had previously been the Special Operations Training Group. and they were the organization where I had worked on the West Coast, responsible for teaching close quarter battle training, sniper or urban sniper and urban reconnaissance training. So I had that cadre who were very good at the things that they taught already. When we decided that we had to stand up an assessment selection, we kind of put some guys at that, and then I was primarily responsible for the course that would make Marine Raiders. We were fortunate in that we had the opportunity to go out to the Naval Special Warfare Center and take a look at everything that was being done there.
How real men train. That's what. No. Fuck no.
Then down to NSW is very welcoming.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think it was by that point that Commander Wilson, who had been our boss, took over the center. So that was, he was, kind of welcomed us with open arms. The Army was less so. At the guy level, they were all about it. But the commander that they had at the time at the JFK Center was didn't want Marines around.
Yeah.
So we went and looked at that. We also our recon training pipeline, and it's really not rocket science, but we went into it with I tried to go back to the same lessons I learned as a young guy, that we got to be brilliant in the basics. You've got to learn a crawl, walk, run, a progression of skills from you've got to be grounded in greenside stuff, basic patrolling, planning, just the basics. So it really took the form of what ultimately became now is a 9-month course that makes Marine Raiders. It's broken down into 4 main phases of basic skills, kind of shoot, move, communicate, SEER school, then moving into ground side tactics or basic combat skills, and amphib skills, and then close quarter battle, reconnaissance, and we're working through and with partner forces.
Is it about the same time in each of those 4 blocks? It's
pretty close. It's pretty close. The later phases are a little shorter, or more kind of less instruction and more doing, because by the time we get there, it's a lot more. Everything that they've learned is coming together.
Yeah, I gotcha. And you spent how many years did you spend there?
So I spent 2 years on active duty, and I was. I realized that I was at this point going to be promoted if I stayed in to E9, which is something I'd always wanted, but I could kind of see the writing on the wall that if that happened, I was going to probably go back to California and probably out of MARSOC back to a recon unit, which would have been awesome. But I really, I wanted to see this thing grow, so I retired from active duty. And at the time, because the war was on, the requirements were a little bit different. Now there's called a cooling off period. You can't go straight from active duty to a government job. That wasn't the case. So I think I took off a week and was back at work as a government civilian. So I've been there now as a civilian for I think 17.
Wow.
Or no, 16 years.
Yeah. How would you kind of synopsize the evolution of MARSOC from its very beginning, where you were a part of, until where it is kind of current day?
Like I said, I think it's been, it started off very, very heavy in Afghanistan, and that moved to Iraq and Syria, and now I think we've become recognized as a full partner, with full capabilities kind of across the spectrum of special operations. So we've got, we got people all over the place doing all sorts of things. The training hasn't changed much. The initial training, I think one of the things we've done well is realize that, our job is to, assess and select the right individual, and then train them to be useful on a team on day one, but also recognizing that we can't teach them everything they're going to need to know. Right? They have team chiefs and team commanders that we'll have to keep building on that.
How many active duty MARSOC or Marine Raiders are there currently on average?
There, I don't even know if I could say that. Not very many. I mean, we're as
fewer than active duty SEALs.
Yeah,
by quite a bit.
Yeah. I think we make up about 3% of SOCOM.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
I mean, SEALs are usually in between 2,000 and 2,300, active duty SEALs. Now that's not operators. There's there's not admin, but I mean, there's training staff, there's leadership. I don't know what the number. I mean, I could do the math, but I mean, there's usually between 2 and 225 per team. Dev group is maybe a little bigger than that. Fuck, maybe not. I don't know, but that's interesting. Like if you look at SOCOM as a whole and the role that MARSOC plays, what would you say is the main difference between MARSOC and obviously SEALs are the closest contingent, but what do they bring to the table that SOCOM doesn't have?
I think, and that's been a thing that's been somewhat challenging for MARSOC to answer since the beginning. What's our niche? What do we do differently? And it was absolutely kind of hard to tell early on because everybody was kind of doing the same thing. I mean, it just there wasn't a whole lot of water to worry about. It was just a whole lot of desert and raids. Yeah. So everybody was getting really good at that. Now, MARSOC has been, I think we're kind of getting back to our roots of reconnaissance and kind of working in the littorals. So that's,
I guess, for any outsider looking in to say, because it's a question I get asked often and find myself having a hard time answering, which is what's the difference between MARSOC and SEALs? It's like, there's not a huge difference really. I mean, I don't think, I think, each crew has its own, history and whatever you want to call it, I guess, where they came from. But I mean, in terms of what they do day to day, it's pretty similar.
A lot of similarities. I mean, we're certainly not as competent, underwater. I mean, we do have divers, and but we don't have the level of the SDV guys and things like that. But I think I think the way forward is getting back to the what Force Recon was always really good at is deep reconnaissance, battle space shaping.
I guess from a personal standpoint, if you look at what technology is today, if you think back to like when in the early 60s when JFK was like, Spec Ops needs to be a broader thing and we need more of them. That's, that's when SEALs basically started, the SEAL teams. To me, when I think of, where technology is with drones and satellites and things like that, it seems like deep reconnaissance is a tougher thing to have humans do and it be worth having us do them. I'm not saying it's obsolete to have it. There are roles. Do you feel that same way?
It's definitely become a lot more challenging. And the interesting thing is that the more technology there is out there, the more you've got to kind of go back to relying on the things that they did in Vietnam. Yeah. So, I mean, now, using, what's called like low probability of intercept communication, is more important, which means really going, instead of relying on SATCOM and things, going back to like high frequency communication and using like techniques of train masking and low, power output radios to limit the likelihood that you're going to be picked up. I think there will, and with drones and everything, it's obviously much more challenging, but I think it's still necessary in a lot of cases that you have people who can get into places and get eyes on, or get into places and launch a drone that's not going to be knocked out of the sky the minute you throw it up.
Yeah, it's interesting how some things have come full circle, and it's going back to anti-technology to defeat technology.
Yeah.
If you look back at, post 9/11, kind of the current generation, I guess, of MARSOC warfighters, are there any teams, missions, operations that stand out as being particularly impactful in MARSOC's history since then?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that stands out is that MARSOC has demonstrated like a versatility that that is I think a little bit unique.
Yeah,
special operations. A big part of that continues to be the fact that we were pretty. I think we do a great job of selecting, training our enablers that come out with us, the comm guys and intel guys. We put them through a pretty significant selection and screening process, and particularly our intel guys just continue to drive a lot of the success of MARSOC missions. I think from enduring freedom, Iraqi freedom, but in places all over, in Africa and the Pacific, there's just been I think it's the flexibility of what teams have been able to do that's really led to their success.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a unique contingent, special operations wise, as far as holding out, as long as they did, and the Marines are always kind of almost the bastard children, in the military, in a good way though. Like they, the pride that Marines have, and like the integration of their history, and how much every Marine I've ever met knows about the history of the Marine Corps and whatever, to me is really cool. I like to see that level of kind of pride in where you come from that you just don't see as much in other branches. But tough. You decided to write Tough Rugged Bastards. Why did you write it, and tell us a little bit about the book?
Certainly. So when I was, and you were probably the same, when I went to boot camp, they at the time for the GI Bill, right, you had to pay into it. Right, you had to pay $100 a month, and I had no interest in ever stepping foot inside a classroom again. But and so I told them I didn't want to pay for it, but the drill instructor's like, "No, you're paying." So fill out the paperwork. Yeah. So for the first year I was in, every paycheck $100 came out, and paychecks weren't that big back then. So I was well along. In fact, it was really after I came back from Afghanistan that I was like, "Hey, I should probably start thinking about trying to educate myself a little bit." So I was able to use the tuition assistance, which doesn't impact your GI Bill benefits, to finish right before I retired. I finished a degree in Homeland Security.
Oh,
so
cool.
I thought I was going to be a consultant and make a whole lot of money. Yeah. That didn't happen. So I decided to go into government service instead, and I absolutely enjoy it. But a couple of years after I got out, I was like, hey, I spent time putting money into this GI Bill. I'm gonna get all my money back. So I looked at the easiest thing I could do, and it wound up being a master's degree in liberal arts, right, where I could just take whatever classes I wanted. And it turned out most of those were in literature. So it was a lot of, and that really kind of reminded me that, I had grown up loving to read. So I got back really into reading and consequently into writing. And as I was finishing that one up, I realized two things. One, that I still had like half of my GI Bill left. And one of the professors was like, hey, you're kind of good at writing. We have at the University of North Carolina, they had a Master of Fine Arts program in writing. They're like, hey, why don't you apply to it? Like it's pretty selective, so they only pick a handful of people a year. I'm like, well, I have absolutely no chance, but if it'll make you happy, I'll apply. And it was the story about shooting that guy in Najaf that was really the kind of the first good thing I had written, I think. So I submitted that, and they must have had some quotas or something for like former military guys, so they let me in. So you had the opportunity to actually learn how to write, and actually be around writers. And it took a while, but actually start thinking of myself as a writer. And so I finished that up, and truly I wanted to write fiction. I was going to write novels and nothing to do with personal stuff. But I got kind of encouraged to, and eventually, introduced to an agent, and he was like, hey, we can, let's turn this into a book. And it's, an honor to be able to kind of tell the story of the guys of Det One. I mean, even though it's mostly my story, it's kind of, our story. So I wanted to do that, I wanted to kind of capture that history, that, very few people know about. And I also wanted to, I think, I feel like most of the kind of GWAT memoirs are, especially special operations. I mean, you could fill this room, right, with books written by guys. I think a lot of them are, a lot of them are great books. A lot of them I enjoy reading, but a lot of them are really catered to a military audience. And I wanted to write something that a military audience would like and enjoy and hopefully get some things out of. But I also wanted to write it kind of for a civilian audience as well, for people that have never been in the military to kind of just understand what it's like, killing somebody, what it's like to, stand up a unit from nothing. Include some, without being too preachy, right, some kind of leadership lessons and thoughts on toughness and mental toughness, things like that.
Yeah. When you got accepted to that program, was it in person?
Yes.
Was that a big culture shock coming from the military?
Huge.
Yeah, huge.
Oh man. I mean, that was the first time I had really been, because the other master's degree I got was partially online and it was very small classes. So this was really the first time I had been thrown into a group of non-military people.
Yeah.
And they're writers, right? So they're, across the board of, most of them younger than me, but, one or two older. So yeah, absolute culture shock. And I've said this, on a number of times, I was more scared walking into those classrooms than I was walking down the street in Najaf. I was much more at home with a rifle in my hand. Yeah. I was just afraid that they were, afraid, maybe not quite the right word, but almost. I mean, I was like, hey, I'm not going to fit in. All these people are going to think I'm a warmongering asshole and
baby killer.
Yeah. And it wasn't that way. They were, I'm still good friends with a lot of them. Wow. They're people, people are generally people. Yeah. And, I learned a ton from them. Hopefully, I think they learned some things from me. Yeah. Probably things that they may regret learning. I don't know. Yeah. But, it was good. It was a absolutely experience unlike anything I had experienced before that.
I can imagine. Yeah. I've not been in that environment. Not in person. I did, everything was online. So it was just kind of sterile that way, I guess. But it's weird putting myself in that position to think like how fish out of water that probably would have felt.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, and you would think, and I don't, you would think that you would walk into that situation like pretty self-assured, like I can kill everybody in this fucking room with my pencil or whatever. But yeah, I was scared. Yeah. Not kind of pulling any punches. I was. I don't know. It's weird. It's like being a kid again. Yeah. Like, I'm not going to fit in. They're not going to like me. They're going to, they're probably all making fun of me, talking about me behind my back. And
it wasn't that way at all.
No. Or maybe they did talk about me behind my back. I don't know. Yeah. But I don't think so.
Yeah. The concept of being rugged seems to go beyond physical strength in the book. How would you define true ruggedness, and what role does mental fortitude play in it?
Oh, I am absolutely convinced that mental toughness, grit, ruggedness, the title, that tough, rugged bastards, like came specifically from a quote by our boss, Colonel Coates. Kind of what he told me when he gave me a team. He's like, hey, I want tough, rugged bastards. And I was like, all right, I'm going to tuck that away and use it if I ever write a book. So check that off my to-do list. But, I've credit, whatever success I've had. I'm not a big guy. I'm not a super strong guy or, super good at most anything. But, I've always, from that time being willing to drown in the pool to realize that you can always do more. Yeah. And I've kind of prided myself on, sometimes it's the fine line between toughness and stupidity, and I've crossed over it, many times.
Yeah.
But, I think whatever success I've had has been for, I've been willing to do really hard things.
Yeah.
And the more I talk a lot about it being like a well, right? When you do hard shit, you dig the well of mental toughness. And then, when it's time to do more hard shit, you come back and there's water there.
Do you think that grit or ruggedness, toughness kind of all jumbled into one trait is genetic, or do you think that it's a choice?
I don't, my dad's a great guy. I don't recall him being terribly rugged, and it wasn't something that was really put on us as kids. So I don't know. I think, historically, like I come from pretty hardy stock of, mountain people, but I definitely think that anybody can build, you just have to want something badly enough that you're willing to do what it takes to achieve it.
Yeah. I wonder if it's purely genetic, because, if you look at, say, willpower, whether if it's something totally different, like, not eating shit that is going to turn you into a 300-pound fat fuck or drug addiction or whatever, is that, you hear, and I think there's a happy medium, but you hear, alcoholism, drug addiction, it's not a choice, it's a disease, et cetera. And I think that, I think you could argue that for sure. I'm not convinced that it's completely the same, but I also think that, that type of ruggedness and willpower and whatever, I think is largely there or it isn't. And for the people, that are tough, I mean, you've spent time as an instructor, you've seen students quit, as have I, and you're always surprised both ways of the people that you're like, man, that kid's fucking solid dude, and he just doesn't have it between the ears, and vice versa. Other guys that can barely do 6 pull-ups that, are built like a fucking thumb, but they're standing there at the end of graduation, and to me, it always made me wonder, like, is it largely genetic? Like, are you just hardwired to be a hard fuck and you have an ability to push yourself, whereas some people just don't naturally?
Yeah, I don't know. I absolutely, there's probably some of it, but I also don't buy into the idea completely. Some things are alcoholism maybe is hereditary, but I think, alcoholism, drug addiction, all these things, I think sometimes we give people
too much slack that way.
Yeah, exactly. That it's, it's a disease. If it's disease, there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah. Right. And I think there is shit you can do about it. Yeah. Right. You can not fucking take drugs. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, to me, like if you said a 4-year-old with leukemia versus, somebody who can't stop shooting heroin, that's not the same fucking thing. Like it just isn't,
Yeah.
I don't think, but.
And so I think particularly with toughness, and I've like studied it. I've tried to read everything kind of on it, on everything. And I kind of lump in, kind of combat mindset, all of that. And I've spent a lot of my life because, like I said, because I've had to, if I was going to be successful, I knew I needed to be tougher than the next guy. Yeah. Because I'm not, I don't have a whole lot else going for me. Yeah. I think I was maybe, if anything, I was like not much, but just a little bit smarter than the average bear. Yeah. Smart enough at least to like kind of look a couple of steps ahead and say, hey, what's going to make me successful at this thing or that thing? Yeah. And really I think for me, it was just wanting it really fucking bad. I wanted to, from the time I walked into the recruiter's office and saw those pictures, of sniper school, dive school, I was like, fuck, I really want to do this. Yeah. And I went to dive school. There's a guy, like I said, who could barely fucking swim. Yeah. And somehow or another managed to, and it was just because I wasn't going to drown, right? Yeah. I wasn't going to let him, make me quit during sharking or whatever the case.
Yeah. That's fine. That's pretty classic. Do you think that toughness, generally speaking, looks different today than it has in past generations, or has it evolved? Do you think it is pretty universal and timeless?
I think it's pretty timeless. I do think that I think that being a guy who just turned 55, right? I think that it's got to mean something different as you start getting a little bit older, because you can't just be a tough fuck or you're going to break.
Yeah.
Right. The last time I tried to be a tough fuck, I now need to have this shoulder rebuilt.
Yeah.
So, trying to like do Turkish get-ups with the young guys.
Yeah.
Right. That I learned. I showed them. Right. I learned the lesson. So yeah, I think I think as we start getting older, we have to not give up. Which is I think a lot of people do. But you've got to redefine what success looks like, toughness wise.
Yeah. Do you see technology and in particular kind of social media and the constant digital distraction being a problem in special operations?
I do, for a couple of reasons. One, it's just, if you do not have a significant digital footprint, then that's a indicator, right? If I can't find you on the internet and you're in your 20s or 30s, then that's going to raise red flags, by somebody who knows what they're looking for. If you do, then there's a huge digital footprint on you, and so that's one kind of a slightly off topic aspect of it, but it's if you're coming into special operations, you've really got to consider that now, where you didn't before. That as soon as you show up in a country, somebody is going to be looking you up.
Yeah.
Following you on Facebook or whatever.
Right.
But from the distractor point, I mean, it's hard. It's most of like our training program. We don't let them carry their phones during the day. They can't bring them in the buildings and things like that. So it's not like they're sitting in class, Do
you ever get guys trying to sneak them in or have them with them and they're not supposed to? And
we, it's not really. I mean, if you get caught, it's not worth it. It's not, you're gone.
Yeah.
And all of our buildings now will, kind of flag, devices that come in.
Oh, wow.
We did have, it was quite a few years ago, a kid, that was trying to, he thought he was going to like make a little documentary. He was like, I think he might have had the glasses that
Record?
could video. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I think he was trying to, capture stuff, and somebody found him and he was gone. So it's not something that you want to do if you're serious about being there.
Yeah. Is there a particular moment in your entire active duty career where you had to rely on significant mental toughness to make it through that stands out?
So there's probably a couple, but one absolutely that a training exercise that, and again, sometimes mental toughness is almost synonymous, in this case probably was, with stupidity, but we were jumping into a training mission out in the desert, I think in Island, maybe somewhere out there, and bad, horrible spot, free fall insert, nighttime to a unmarked DZ, jump out, and the jump master put us out in the wrong place. And I'm a light guy, so as the light guy, my ruck is, packed down, right? So I've got like over 100-pound ruck just to try to make sure that it'll fall at the same rate as everybody else. I'm looking at my little compass board, flying, and I come over the radio, and I'm like, hey, we're at, 5,000 feet, something, start looking for the DZ, because it wasn't illuminated, right? We were supposed to find it. I look up, and I'm heading straight into the face of a mountain. All right, so we had, been dropped off totally in the wrong place, following the right azimuth, but I'm like, shit. And look down and realize that I could see the ground. So we're not at 5,000 feet.
Damn.
We're like 100 feet.
Jeez.
So because we were, flying into the side of this mountain. So I bury a toggle on on my parachute. I try to make a let people know, come over the I'll push to talk and tell them, hey, the ground is is right here. I spin around, get around, drop my ruck, and just slam into the ground.
Yeah.
Like I can't get up. I'm like, holy shit. And this jump was intended to be a rehearsal for the next night when we were going to go in support of a mission that the Army unit was doing. You know, the reason I can't stand up is because I've got a big fucking mesquite branch shoved into my ass, like, you know, in my ass cheek, right? I'm like, I pull it out and I get up and, like, you know, trying to stop the bleeding. You know, eventually we get picked up, go back and get my, you know, platoon corpsman to look at it, and he's like, man, that's not really good. I'm like, yeah, Doc, but I got to jump in tomorrow, so just do what you got to do. So he stuffs it. I mean, it was gauze, like a rolls of gauze, and this big gaping ass wound. So the next night, of course, you know, I tell him to keep it quiet. You know, give me some Motrin or whatever. This, you know, corpsmen are fond of handing out, and jump out of an airplane. You know, land. You know, I have to walk across the, you know, miles of desert to get to an OP, and that's just, you know, the sort of thing I didn't want to miss. You know, you don't want to. Some of it's toughness, I think, absolutely. A lot of it's stupidity, but a big part of it was just like the fear of missing out on, you know, the stories on the patrol.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's brutal. Did you guys jump the jump master's ass afterwards?
Oh hell yeah! So he had, and it was not excusable, but there were two dry lake beds, and he had, you know, identified the wrong one and was kind of navigating off of that.
Yeah, brutal.
So,
in today's world, where, you know, people kind of seek comfort, convenience, the, you know, technology-driven route, how do you think we can encourage a return to values such as toughness, grit, resilience, etc.?
I feel like a lot of people are starting to recognize that they need it more so. You know, for me, I think, you know, there's studies done on just like called the 72-hour effect, right? If you can take your ass out in the woods, you know, preferably alone, you know, where your phone doesn't work, and spend 3 days, then the rewards from that keep coming. Like they last much, much longer, just in your clarity and things like that. But I'm a huge fan of, you know, doing hard, you know, physical training, whatever that is, you know, rucking, that's kind of my thing. You know, I love, you know, nothing when I after I retired from the Marine Corps, and I had not been like I said, I ran cross country in high school, but never really loved running, and still have never loved running. But I took up running ultra marathons and got into that for a long time. You know, just trying to find like harder shit to do. And it's interesting, you know, when you get into that community, that there's absolutely a lot of, you know, former special operations guys, you know, former military folks that do it, but there's also a lot of like bankers and accountants and people that just incredibly hard. I mean, you know, 100-mile, you know, races, you know, through the night. You know, for people that have never been in the military, never really been exposed to the outdoors. It's a lot of time. I was really impressed by a lot of them. But when COVID hit, I kind of a lot of those died off, and I started, you know, going back and just hiking, you know, going out in the backcountry and hiking, you know, for a week or so on my own, and found that, man, that's, you know, I love that.
Yeah, that's
and
cool.
it requires a lot of the same, you know, resilience and grit and fortitude, and the stupider you are, the more of it requires.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I do have some Patreon questions. John wants to know, what's the proudest moment of your career?
That's I suspect there's probably a couple of different answers to that, but
First one that comes to mind.
The first one that comes to mind is absolutely, you know, passing the second time around the Force Recon NDOC.
Yeah.
I had put those guys on such a pedestal,
Yeah.
you know, that you know, them kind of welcoming me in was prouder than, you know, getting promoted to, you know, any other ranks or anything like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Claire wants to know, or she says, I tend to believe true leaders are born and not made. Change my mind.
I don't feel that I was born a leader. at all. I have nothing to counter that opinion, like to demonstrate through my life until I joined the Marine Corps. I think I had both a lot of really good leaders that I had to look up to, and a couple of really shitty ones. And you can learn something from, even if it's a good example of a bad example. You know?
Yeah.
So I really feel that when I learned different things that I took away from different people. And I was, like I said, if anything, I was maybe a little bit smarter, and that I was like kind of consciously would try to say, hey, what is it about this guy that's good, and how can I use it? And then what is it about this guy that's bad, and how can I, avoid it?
Right.
But I really feel my first platoon sergeant, when I got the Force Recon, kind of set the standard, I think, for me of like what a good leader is. And that was, before that, I had been a leader. Sometimes I don't think I was a great leader. I think I was, I absolutely wasn't a great leader. But from him, I learned the lesson that you got to uphold standards. Before that, as a young guy, as like a corporal, as a sergeant, young sergeant, I would, make exceptions for friends.
Yeah,
I think. And then I learned from him, like, nah, the standard's a standard.
Yeah.
You gotta hold the standard.
Yeah. Amen on that. John wants to know/say, think of the best leader that you were around in the Marines, which sounds like it was that guy. What are the top 3 life lessons that you learned from that person?
The first, like I said, the standard's the standard. I think Colonel Coates would probably be that guy. I think for me, require people to be tough, rugged bastards. That was absolutely one of them, that you create tough, rugged bastards by putting heavy loads on you and making you go until you don't think you can go anymore. And then, you've got to, you trust your people enough and let them succeed or fail on their own.
Yeah. I think those are great. And I, to that second question, I think that there has to be at least the potential to be a good leader that you're born with, not necessarily that you're just born that way. Maybe some people are just born great leaders, but I think it's kind of like sports. Like, you've got to have the genetic athletic capacity, and then it needs to be brought up the right way too,
Yeah, I'm absolutely. I think there are traits, genetic or nurture wise, whatever, that enable, that kind of plant the seeds.
Yeah.
I think I learned a lot, from my parents that I never recognized at the time, but kind of came out later in life. And I think absolutely, resilience was one that kind of set the stage for ruggedness, probably.
Yeah. Before we wrap up here, I do want to say the Patreon post-show stuff, John and I are going to sit down and talk about a little bit of politics stuff, not too heavy because of his current job, but also how we would organize and deploy a new SOCOM team and kind of dirt dive that. So if you want to check that bonus clip out, join the Patreon page. Lastly, just any new, do you plan on continuing doing what you're doing? Any new projects? Any different books you want to write? What do you got in the future?
Yeah, so I do plan on another book. I'm hoping to get started on next year. I think it's going to kind of lead more into, what the feedback I've gotten thus far is that the stories, people like the stories, like kind of taking those, but pulling out more leadership lessons from them. I'll probably stay at my job for at least another couple of years. I get to hang out with Raiders, all day, every day, get to go to the gym with them. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's the reason I've got to get back. I got to fly out here shortly because tomorrow night it's when they get their badge.
Oh, nice.
The actual graduation ceremony is on Friday for the families, but
that's cool.
We'll hike out into the woods and have smoked meat and fire and
how fucking cool is that to be a part of that?
Yeah, I mean, I like pinch myself every day. It's super awesome. So I love it, and at least 3 out of 5 days a week, I love my job. There's still the bullshit I have to deal with, but I always tell myself that when I stop loving it, more days than I don't, then it'll be time to move on.
Yeah,
I say the other thing that I do is I write a couple of weekly, along the similar lines, a couple of weekly Substacks, that encourage people to check out. The one it's called Walking Point, which is really kind of not my attempt to tailor military lessons to be valuable to people, hopefully. And the other's called Ruck the Fuck Up, in which I primarily talk about mental toughness and rucking.
Yeah. With that badge award ceremony, is that something where the position that you're in, like you could bring me to observe that, or would that be fucking
no? It's
pretty sacred.
It's very strict. So we've had a couple of we had a senator who wanted to come, and they're like, nah. So I'm on the one hand, I'm really glad that we hold that standard. On the other, I've I really wish that I could bring some people out to it, because it's really cool.
That's not the first thing I've not been invited to. Thank you for sharing the story. I do have, you brought me a coin, so I got one to give back to you. And then also a big thanks to John Johnston and Champion Choice Silver in that black box. A little to commemorate being on the show, a nice shit kicker buckle.
That is awesome. I have a large collection of 100-mile race buckles.
Oh, nice.
So this will
to fit right in.
This will fit right in.
Awesome.
Very cool. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for coming. It's such a treat for me to be able to sit down with you and hear so many stories of kind of our counterpart in similar time frames of when I was in, and it just I have such reverence and respect for Raiders and everything that they've brought to to the United States for the many years that they've been doing it. So thank you again for sharing your story. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, it's been a huge honor to be on. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thank you for coming. To the listener, I hope you enjoyed it. Again, feel free to check out the Patreon page and sign up for bonus footage of before and after stuff, other clips, early episodes that are ad-free, etc. Also as well, we do some swag depending on what tier you're in, and coins and stickers and mugs and all kinds of stuff. So check that out. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you didn't, you can choke yourself. And until next time, this is Mic Drop.